A suspenseful conclave at the Vatican, an escalating conflict between two nuclear powers, and a terrifying Pitbull attack in New York City. I'm Elizabeth Vargas, and America's News starts right now.
Tonight, black smoke rises from the Sistine Chapel as the cardinals fail to elect a new pope on day one of Conclave. It's one of the oldest and most secret processes in the world. So what's next, and how long could it take? Then a small dog is nearly mauled to death by two pit bulls in New York City. The same pit bulls allegedly killed another dog in Central Park only months ago. Local district attorney is looking into the case. Will the owners finally be held responsible? And later,
I knew that I was now something else. I had inside knowledge into the deception of our government by elements of our intelligence community.
New details on the latest UFO whistleblower, on the stunning documents he says he read, the depth and scope of the UFO cover-up he alleges, and the methodical by-the-book process he says he followed before making the fateful decision to go public. Investigative journalist Jeremy Corbell returns to discuss part 2 of his explosive interview.
But first tonight, the sacred election process that has gripped the world's attention, the papal conclave to choose the next pope. And the results from day one, black smoke, meaning none of the 133 cardinals locked in the Sistine Chapel has been elected to succeed Pope Francis. That means the cardinals, including 10 Americans, will remain locked away with nothing but themselves and Michelangelo's masterpieces for company, cut off from the outside world until they elect the 267th leader of the Catholic Church. The world's longest-running electoral process goes back to the Middle Ages, and for many of these cardinals, it's the first time conclaving. Some of them even reportedly watched the Oscar-winning movie to learn how to do it, according to Politico. Now, this could go on days, months, even years it did at one point, until 2/3 of those cardinals agree on a pope and the smoke wafting from the chapel chimney turns white. That means no phones, no iPads, no Wi-Fi, so no way to follow the flood of memes that has been inundating the internet this week as the Vatican has suddenly become, of all things, trendy. So what is conclave life like? Well, for one, it involves plenty of prayer and politicking. In their downtime, the cardinals hang out and sleep in the 5-story guest house known as Casa de Santa Marta. That's where Pope Francis chose to live after his election in 2013 and where he died just 16 days ago. The cardinals won't be allowed into Francis's residence, so that leaves about 125 rooms for 133 people, the largest conclave ever. As for conclave cuisine, the Vatican's kitchen staff prepares the meals in secrecy so cardinals can't send out for pizza. No exceptions. Not even for Cardinal Pizzaballa, an Italian, obviously, and the Patriarch of Jerusalem, who has emerged as a top contender for the Pope. The details of Vatican ritual are infinitely fascinating, but it's important to remember this is a holy tradition in the eyes of the world's 1.4 billion Catholics, and an important one. Will the next pope continue along the progressive path of Pope Francis or return to the more conservative stances of Pope Francis's predecessors, Benedict and John Paul II? We'll be watching that chimney to find out. Let's go right now to NewsNation's Robert Sherman live for us in Rome. Robert, this could be a pivotal moment in Catholic Church history. What was it like today in St. Peter's Square?
Yeah, we heard that from a lot of people, Elizabeth. Just so much energy on the ground and people saying that they wanted to be a part of the history and take in this historic moment here, which is why we saw people flocking in from across the globe that were so fascinated by all of this that was taking place. Tens of thousands of people gathering in St. Peter's Square. Some came from Africa, some came from Asia, some came from South America, and some, of course, came from the United States. Here's a few that we met. Take a listen.
Just amazing. There's so much energy from everyone being here. There's pilgrims going through for the Jubilee year. And it's just, I can't believe we're here and we're part of it.
It feels like I'm living in an open history book.
And the history books are still being written, and the work of the cardinals still not done, as they will continue to be sealed away until we see white smoke billowing from that chimney atop the Sistine Chapel. And in terms of what they could be talking about, well, we've been able to glean a little perspective from the homily given by Cardinal Ray today. He spoke about how this particular moment in history requires a specific kind of leader, looking at the global landscape, situation in Ukraine, Gaza. Now you look at India and Pakistan as well. And that was the focus of the homily today, and the focus that's being pressed upon the cardinals, finding the right leader for this moment in history to lead the church into the future. Elizabeth?
Yeah, that's a tall, tall order. Robert Sherman, live in Rome. Thank you so much. Let's bring on our experts now. Ashley McGuire is a senior fellow with the Catholic Association, and Kurt Martins is a professor at the Catholic University of America's School of Canon Law. Great to have both of you here. Kurt, this is one of the oldest and most mysterious processes in the world, but there are things we do know. And one of the first orders of business today, after those big doors were closed and sealed, was the selection of 9 cardinals, randomly selected, 3 to count the votes, 3 to double check and oversee the counting, and 3 just in case somebody gets sick.
That's right. So, and actually, the 3 that are selected for someone who is sick may be used tomorrow, because the rumor was that one of the cardinals was too sick to be constantly in the Sistine Chapel and he would stay in his room. So that means those 3 would have to go over to Santa Marta with a ballot box and a ballot, have the cardinal fill it out, put it in there, come back to the Sistine Chapel. That ballot will have to be mixed with the ballots that were cast in the Sistine Chapel to make sure that they're all together. And then the 3 others and the 6 others come into play to check the ballots. So if you thought that tonight was a long waiting, wait until tomorrow and the next day.
Do we know why the cardinal's sick? What's wrong with him?
He was sick. He almost didn't come to the conclave. You saw him walk in today with a cane, and he didn't look very healthy. So I can understand that someone is not capable enough to come to the chapel to vote.
Ashley, the first vote just happened a few hours ago, actually a little bit later than folks expected. It was about 9 p.m. In Rome when we finally saw the black smoke coming out. The cardinals have all now retired for the night. What are they doing tonight? Are any of them meeting or talking about the vote tomorrow?
Well, they probably had a very late dinner, one that they were probably very eagerly waiting. I mean, Rome time, 6 o'clock, the doors were shut. They listened to a meditation, and then they had their first vote, which if we have 133 votes that have to be cast, and each one of those votes, it's not just a simple click of a button. They have to walk in. It's a liturgical act. They make yet another sort of oath and cast their ballot, and then the votes have to be counted in a very specific way. So it was a long night for them. My guess is most of them are pretty tired. But sure, I mean, they're going to be talking amongst themselves, and they're going to be convening again in the morning for the first of what's probably going to be, well, we know 2 votes in the morning, unless we have somebody with the first vote, and then another 1 to 2 in the afternoon. Cardinal
John Dolan of New York said he tells everybody, all the fellow cardinals, to bring a book because there is a lot of downtime. He by the way, brought with him the biography of Michelangelo. He said he also packed 12 packets of peanut butter because in his opinion, the food is not that good, which seems somehow sacrilegious what to say if you're in Rome. He says he brought 4 days worth of peanut butter packets, a sign he says this conclave is going to last longer than the last one.
Well, Cardinal Dolan is not wrong. The food actually in Santa Marta isn't that great. I'd rather go to a nice Roman restaurant than go to Santa Marta. Yeah, there is a lot of silence in the Sistine Chapel. There is a lot of downtime. So when each cardinal has filled out his ballot, they have to come with the ballot in their hand forward to the altar, put it there on a kind of paten, and then slide it in the ballot box.
Yeah,
and
one by one, which takes a long time.
One by one. So that's why it takes so much time. There are 133 who have to process down. We can do that faster probably, but you're talking about middle-aged and a little bit older men who have to walk down. So it's not going to go that fast. When I was watching this afternoon the swearing of the oath, it took forever.
Ashley, Ashley, many of these cardinals are new to the conclave. They're from far-flung countries. They haven't even met before this whole process. Here's how the New York Times described the past few days for all these new cardinals. So many unfamiliar faces, cardinals wearing name tags, and daily Vatican meetings that have taken on the feel of theological speed dating sessions as they all get to know each other.
No, and I mean, there's even talk about them having a booklet with each other's bios in it. And you're absolutely right. I mean, this is the most geographically diverse group of cardinals in the history of the church. This is something that Pope Francis made good on. I was there in 2013 when he stepped out on that balcony and he said, I want to go to the peripheries, to the ends of the earth. That's absolutely what he did when he appointed cardinals from parts of the world that never had cardinals. Now they're all here together for the first time. They don't know each other very well, and it certainly adds an element of unpredictability to things, and we'll see.
Unpredictability, and to many observers, perhaps a touch of chaos as they all try and, you know, it's hard to have a voting block if you're all just meeting, for example. Ashley and Kurt, thank you both so much. I really appreciate it. This process will continue tomorrow morning. All right, we now turn from sacred tradition to, unfortunately, secular conflict. For decades, the policy of mutually assured destruction kept two nuclear rivals, the United States and the Soviet Union, from escalating their Cold War into an extremely hot one. Well, the world is now witnessing another simmering standoff between adversarial members of the nuclear club, and that would be India and Pakistan. What passes for peaceful relations between South Asia's regional rivals has once again been consumed in the cauldron of the contested Kashmir region. India launched attacks inside Pakistan, and Pakistan administered Kashmir last night. It's all in retaliation for a terrible terrorist attack from Pakistani militants 2 weeks ago that killed 26 civilians, most of them Indian. In response, Pakistan says the attacks are an act of war and that its armed forces will take corresponding actions. Pakistan is also claiming it downed 5 Indian fighter jets. Now, the international response has been swift. The UK saying both sides have an interest in stability and de-escalating. China is calling on both countries to avoid taking actions that would further complicate the situation. And the question now is, what's America's role in all this? It's complicated. The United States has been a close frenemy, basically, of Pakistan since 9/11, but in recent years has been gravitating closer to India. This was President Trump's take from the Oval Office just this afternoon.
I know both very well, and I want to see them work it out. I want to see them stop, and hopefully they can stop now. They've gone tit for tat. So hopefully they can stop now. But I know both. We get along with both the countries very well, good relationships with both, and I want to see it stop. And if I can do anything to help, I will be there.
Now, remember that in 2019, there were similar fears that India and Pakistan were on the verge of a nuclear war. And then, as during the Cold War, the threat of nuclear devastation may have been paradoxically exactly what prevented it. Here now with us with more on this is former U.S. Ambassador to India, Tim Romer. Ambassador, thanks so much for joining us. So India and Pakistan have basically been at each other's throats since 1947, when Pakistan was cleaved off India. They have fought 3 wars over Kashmir. India has won all of them.
Well, and now we have, Elizabeth, a situation, you mentioned it in your opening, of a brutal terrorist attack on the Indian-controlled area of Kashmir, 26 people slaughtered by machine gun fire, and reportedly the Indian Hindus picked out for that. There was a pause for about 10 days. India suspended the Indus Water Treaty. Airlines suspended all flights between the two countries, and different military people were kicked out of the respective countries. And then on May 7th, India retaliated. I think you would have expected this, Elizabeth, given the brutality of the terrorist attack on India previously. They surgically and tactically went after 9 different terrorist militant camps to try to diminish any kind of collateral. So we're seeing, now we're seeing the Prime Minister of Pakistan say this is an act of war. What comes next? What's the U.S. role, and what does President Trump do going forward?
So let's go back to this terrorist attack 2 weeks ago. They were Pakistani militants who carried out this attack. India accuses the Pakistani government of being involved. Is there any evidence? Has India provided any evidence that Pakistan was involved?
Well, India claims that there is, these militant camps that are housed in Pakistan. And they were also afraid that there was another attack coming after the April 22nd attack. They wanted to prevent that and be proactive about future attacks against Indians. You can imagine the domestic, recoiling and reaction if India would get hit again and not have retaliated.
India and Pakistan are two of the 5 biggest nations on Earth when it comes to population. Both of these countries have nuclear weapons. Pakistan is vowing a, quote, crushing response to the attack by India last night, and also says that it will attack inside India as India attacked inside Pakistan. So what are the dangers this does escalate into an all-out war?
Well, it is potentially, something that everybody should be concerned about, Elizabeth. First of all, I was happy to see that President Trump said that he wants to stop it. Hopefully, he will call both Prime Minister of both countries, Mr.
But China
Modi.
also has great influence in the region.
Yes, but I think the U.S. is primarily the one with the most leverage and influence. Certainly, China and Russia both have friendship and close proximity with Pakistan. They can put pressure there as trading partners.
Okay.
Elizabeth, it would also be helpful if the U.S. had an ambassador in Delhi. We don't have one yet. We have ambassadors nominated around the world and in place in some places. Ambassadors, as you know, play a critical role in these kind of diplomatic missions.
They sure
picking
do.
up the country, helping resolve this with both sides, and getting information back to the White House in America.
Ambassador Tim Romer, maybe you can volunteer for duty. Thank you so much. Appreciate your insight after having served in the region. All right, coming up, we're going to switch gears. Did he or didn't he? 12 New Yorkers will decide the fate of rap mogul Sean Diddy Combs. And get this, tonight we're one step closer, a big step closer to finalizing who the jurors will be. And then later, we have new details from a UFO whistleblower about the roadblocks he faced when he tried to tell the government about a top secret UFO program. Investigative journalist Jeremy Corbell joins me live with the details. All right, after 3 days of intense questioning and the striking of dozens of potential jurors, tonight the magic number has been reached in the Sean Diddy Combs sex trafficking trial. 45 qualified potential jurors have now been curated by the judge and the lawyers from the initial pool. The next step will come Friday, when lawyers on both sides will continue whittling down the panel. The goal is to seat the final 12 jurors with 6 alternates in time for Monday's opening statements. Now, this won't be some dry securities fraud case. The selected jurors can expect to hear some pretty lurid testimony about Combs's alleged sex and drug-filled freak-offs, and plenty of it. Today, Combs sat in court as prospective jurors were questioned. He wore the same navy sweater he's been wearing all week, along with a white-collared shirt and dark pants. Combs took notes and talked frequently with his lawyers. Potential jurors were asked about their knowledge of some A-list celebrities today, including Kanye West, Michael B. Jordan, and Mike Myers. The group has been asked about their musical tastes, if they were familiar with the case, and if they are open-minded to alternative sexual lifestyles. As for those picks so far, our NewsNation courtroom observers say they don't seem to necessarily reflect a jury of Combs's peers, especially when it comes to Black culture and hip-hop. We are told the pool of jurors is predominantly white, made up of suburbanites from Westchester and some city residents from Manhattan, a few from the Bronx, with just 3 Black men in the pool so far. It is worth pointing out there are plenty of white people who like hip-hop music, however. Now, for more on this, let's go to Mercedes Colwin. She's a trial attorney and former judge and host of the M&M in the Morning podcast, and Robert Hirschhorn, a lawyer and a jury consultant. Great to have both of you here. All right, Mercedes, first of all, there have been many moments of actual levity in this questioning. They had all these jurors. They came in one by one and were questioned by the judge and by lawyers from both sides. One juror confessed to shoplifting a magic wand from the Harry Potter store when she was a kid. Another juror confessed it would be hard to pass up smoking his nightly joint during the trial. He was excused. And another juror said he didn't fill out the whole jury questionnaire because he was tired from binge watching Star Wars the night before. Is it always this entertaining in these jury interviews?
I wish I could tell you that's true. It is not, Elizabeth. This is not your typical jury that's that open. Maybe they just feel very relaxed. Maybe they're trying to, they emote because, oh my God, it's Sean Diddy Combs.
Maybe it's because of the nature of the charges and the evidence they're about to hear.
But interesting that it's that lighthearted. This is a newer judge. This judge is a sitting judge just since 2022, Judge Subranian, and he's the first South Asian judge in the Southern District of New York. So it's pretty exciting. And a clerk of RBG.
Yeah.
So he is a serious jurist, but he's allowing for there to be that type of relaxed attitude from the jurors.
All right, Robert, all humor aside, these one-on-one interviews are incredibly important. Why is that? Because I know we had one juror who did say she had seen the infamous video of Sean Combs beating up the woman who will be the star witness. She said Combs looked guilty of domestic violence, and the judge said that's not what he's on trial for.
Yeah, these interviews are everything because Diddy's entire future, whether he's going to be free or spend the rest of his life in prison, is going to depend on these 12 jurors and 6 alternates. Only 12 jurors will end up deliberating. Absolutely the most important part of the case. The lawyers are allowed to ask some questions, which is really important because jurors tend to tell judges what they want to hear. They tend to tell lawyers the truth. The fact that this is so kind of lighthearted, Elizabeth, you know, this is a RICO case. This is a case involving sex trafficking. I've been involved in a bunch of those, and it's not very lighthearted at all. Yeah. I think, you know, the fact that it's being treated this way may tell you something. For example, that Diddy is not a trafficker. He's a swinger. And that may be the theme that you're going to hear in this trial.
You were making the point that we've seen Sean Diddy Combs in the same outfit day after day. You say that's deliberate. Why?
Absolutely. Look, he wants to make himself as much like the jury as possible. He doesn't want to flout the fact that he's very successful and has a lot of money. He wants to be the kind of person that they can relate to. And if he's wearing different clothes every day, the jury's not going to be able to relate to it. They see him as a down-to-earth, kind of normal person, despite who he is, despite all the publicity, despite the charges against him.
Despite the fact that he's worth $1 billion. You know, he's like fabulously, extravagantly wealthy and powerful, not just in music, but in fashion. One last question to you, Robert. He's been taking lots of notes, Sean Combs, talking a lot to his lawyers. This is the kind of thing that these jurors clock. They watch that carefully.
100%. Nothing goes past a jury. I believe in the collective IQ. You know, you've got all this life experience, you've got all this intelligence. The juries will see everything. The jury will notice everything from the bottom of his shoes to the top of his head and everything in between. I love the jury system. That's why if you get your summons for jury duty, please go serve your country. Don't look to get out of it. What we want for Diddy, like we want for all of us, is to make sure we get a fair jury and a fair trial.
Finally, Mercedes, something sort of unusual happened this morning. The judge called in Mark Garagos, the very famous criminal defense attorney, who's actually not officially on this case, but whose daughter is on this case. But he's been coming in. He's been, sitting with the defense lawyers. He apparently went on a podcast where he called the prosecutors a six-pack of white women. The judge told him this morning that was outrageous.
And certainly so. And thankfully, he is not affiliated with the defense, because those types of extrajudicial comments, if they can sway the jury, really will have sanctions against the defendant and the defense counsel. So he has to be very careful. I mean, he is sort of the unofficial, and I know that there's been some hugging between himself, and at least it's been reported that he hugged Puffy Combs in the courtroom. So there's been some interaction between the two of them. At least that's what's been reported. He has to be very careful about what he does outside of the courtroom and what he says.
In a public forum.
Exactly, because if you do influence a jury in some way, it can be very problematic for Puffy Combs. And you don't want
the comment referring to the all-female prosecutorial team, a six-pack of white women, he's speaking to the racial undertones of the case, which is Sean Combs is a black man accused of sex trafficking.
And doesn't that speak to all the terrible history, the American history of black men being accused by white women? If he's going to go down that road of stereotypical allegations, because that's what it sounds like, that he's trying to race bait, number one, and two, just focus on women. But, I mean, Combs is being accused of sex trafficking women. He's being accused of raping women and men. Obviously, there are allegations of rape and men, too.
Yeah.
So, I mean, it's certainly very dangerous. He has to watch himself.
All right. Mercedes Colwin, Robert Hirschhorn, great as always to have you. Really appreciate it.
Thanks, Ben.
All right, coming up for us, a horrific Pitbull attack in a New York City neighborhood is igniting a fierce debate over accountability. Should the owner of the two pit bulls be criminally charged if their dog hurts another animal, even kills another animal? You might be surprised by the answer. Next. All right, Americans love their pets. About half of all Americans own a dog, and we treat our pets, our dogs, our cats, as members of the family. That's why video of a dog attack in New York City has struck such a nerve nationwide, igniting a debate over who should be held responsible. A 16-pound Chihuahua named Penny is recovering after being viciously mauled by two pit bulls. It was all caught on camera, and we're going to show you the video now, but you must be warned, this footage can be very upsetting to watch. What you're seeing in that video is multiple passersby all jumping in to help, trying their best to stop the two pit bulls from tearing Penny apart. One person was even bashing them with a cane. Trying to get pit bulls to let go, of course, can be very difficult because of the sheer strength of their jaws and their high tolerance for pain. Now, Penny unbelievably survived the attack, although with multiple puncture wounds and two 6-inch tears down her back. Her owners consider it a miracle.
If there hadn't been so many people there, well, we think that she could have passed away. But because so many people jumped in to help, she sustained no internal injuries and no broken bones.
Now, to make matters worse, police told Penny's owners that the officers can't get involved. In New York City and in many other places, by the way, dogs are considered property. So when they attack other dogs, it's considered a civil matter, not a criminal one. Some lawmakers in New York are stepping in. New legislation called Penny's Law would criminalize negligent handling in the case of a dog attack. Owners would be held accountable for leaving the scene. So instead of a hit and run, it would be a bite and run that could land you in front of a judge. So joining us now for more on all of this is Ken Phillips. He's known as the dog bite attorney. You know all about these kinds of cases. First of all, I'm just shocked that police can't get involved in a case like this when somebody's walking down the street with their small dog and two pit bulls attack and nearly kill, and in one case in just a couple months ago reportedly did kill another Havanese Shih Tzu in Central Park.
Oh, yeah. It happens all the time. You know, this reflects a decision made by the lawmakers in the jurisdiction, in this case, Manhattan or throughout New York, that certain things should be criminalized and other things we will tolerate. So the question is, what will we tolerate? To me, this is intolerable. But do the lawmakers have the guts to pass the proper kind of law that will take care of this situation? We'll see what Penny's Law looks like after it's proposed.
Now, if the pit bulls had attacked a human being, that would have been a different matter, right?
Yes, it would be a different matter. In fact, only about 10 days ago, the High Court in New York, the Court of Appeals, made a ruling very important for New Yorkers that finally recognized, after decades, that there is such a thing as dog owner negligence when it comes to the handling of dogs. So if a pit bull attacked a person in New York, and it was a pit bull that had never attacked anybody before, but if the owner was negligent in walking the pit bull, then there could be a civil case coming out of that.
What about dogs like these two pit bulls, which are alleged to have attacked not once but twice already that we know of?
This kind of a dog almost everywhere falls under the definition of a potentially dangerous dog, or dangerous dog, depending on how it's worded. A dangerous dog is a dog that has shown a tendency or a desire to go after other people's pets or other people. And this is clearly one of the things that must be recognized, namely that when you have a dog that goes after other people's pets, that dog someday there's a high risk the dog will bite a person.
Right.
Because of what's called a redirected attack, or simply a mistake by the dog, where they're going after another dog and they end up biting another person.
And we have just learned, just like in the last couple of hours, that the district attorney in New York has ordered the DA's office to look into this dog mauling case. So it sounds like this recent attack has gotten people's attention. Just very quickly, how often are pit bulls involved in attacks like these?
Okay, if you're talking about attacks on other people's pets, pit bulls are responsible for about 90% of the fatalities and the attacks, because this is a breed that was developed for the purpose of fighting other dogs. So they're doing what mankind asked them to do. They're fulfilling their function. So yes, they are dangerous to other people's pets.
All right. They're also dangerous to people. I think most people who've been killed by dogs have been killed by pit bulls, as opposed
about
to...
70% of them, yes.
Right.
Yes, 70%.
All right, Ken Phillips, let's hope this leads to maybe some changes in the laws and some charges for an owner. I don't know. That's really scary. Thank you so much. All right, coming up for us, investigative journalist Jeremy Corbell joins me live to discuss the second part of this interview with UFO whistleblower Matthew Brown, who says when he tried to tell people about a top secret program collecting UFO images and videos, that nobody would listen.
Getting to that final step in the ladder and seeing oh, and the cover up is real and it's inside the house.
Red tape, roadblocks, and the runaround. A new UFO whistleblower is sounding the alarm on just how difficult it's been to report an unacknowledged special access program called Immaculate Constellation to Congress. Former U.S. national security official Matthew Brown sat down for an in-depth interview with investigative journalist Jeremy Corbell on his Weaponized podcast. Brown said he decided to tell his boss that he had stumbled upon a top-secret program that was gathering images and videos of UFO encounters from classified military servers. But when he went to his boss, the message was not well received.
Stop. Did you read this? And I don't answer, but I just look him in the eye and I look at the screen and I'm like, of course I read this.
That's how you know it exists.
And he definitely picked up on that, and he the conversation ended with him saying, delete it, and he left the room and we never spoke of it again.
Brown says he didn't stop there. He went on to report IMCON to his boss's boss and to other higher-ups. He says still nothing happened. He eventually decided to seek whistleblower protection and submitted written testimony to Congress. And after a couple meetings with congressional liaisons, still nothing happened. So Brown decided to tell the State Department he's going to go public. He says his main concern at that time was his own safety.
I'm definitely under no illusions that the U.S. government in some capacity knows about me. I'm mainly concerned about foreign intelligence and their possibility of collecting on me. I'm in D.C., spy capital of the world. I was very concerned about that.
Brown says he was equally concerned that the systems put in place to help whistleblowers come forward and protect them seem to have failed him every step of the way. Joining us now is investigative journalist and co-host of the Weaponized podcast, Jeremy Corbell. Jeremy, welcome back. Matthew Brown really describes what he said was serious red tape when he was just trying to report what he saw. Why is that?
Yeah, it's even much bigger than that. I mean, Matthew Brown is an American patriot. And as journalists, George Knapp and I, we are pit bulls on this issue of protecting whistleblowers. Congress has made a show of this. They want whistleblowers to come forward. Well, here you go. So Matthew Brown has inside knowledge of the deception of our government by elements of the intelligence community. He has tried to raise the red flag. He has tried to tell people what's going on. And he's done everything in his power to do it the right way. And this was the best way now, is to come forward with journalists like me and George.
Yeah, but Congress has also made a big show of investigating UFOs and UAPs. I don't understand why they wouldn't be jumping on this.
Right. I think it's a dynamic process. I still want this process to work. And I have been fighting with Congress, really great allies in Congress and senators, to make this work. They have to allow people to be heard in open congressional hearings. That's the whole thing.
Do you think that part of the problem was that what Matthew Brown was describing in this Immaculate Constellation program sounded so far-fetched that people were just like, yeah, I don't believe it?
Not at all. Not at all. This was taken seriously from the very beginning, all the way up through as he brought it up to people's interests. So first of all, there's a difference between the Immaculate Constellation briefing versus the field report, which we successfully got onto congressional record at the last hearing. I brought that into to Congress and got that on the record. So the difference is, the briefing is what he was first initially exposed to. That's what he raised the alerts about. That was the entry point to him and his extensive, long investigation into this. If you read the first part of what he submitted and what we got onto congressional record, it says this document is the result of a multi-year investigation into the subjects of UAP, technologies of unknown origin, and non-human intelligence. Nobody thought this was far-fetched. Everybody took it seriously.
And how did Matthew Brown get access to these documents? Does he say?
Absolutely. If people watch the first two parts of the interviews, you will see step by step. We walk through exactly what happened. At first, it was accidental exposure to the Immaculate Constellation.
So he just opened something that he, by accident, and saw something crazy inside, basically.
In fact, he was raising the alert that if this is an unacknowledged special access program, that it was filed in the wrong place. And then he felt threat that he had seen it and was seeking guidance after he got classes on how to deal with what they call spillage, which is where you see a compartmentalized program when you're not supposed to. This kid has done everything right, and he has not received the support that he should. And Congress should hear what he has to say, because right now they're in the dark.
So when he says he hasn't gotten the whistleblower protection to which he's entitled, and you agree with that, what has he not gotten in this? You know, he says he feels unsafe. Can you elaborate on that?
A little bit, I will elaborate on that now. But the main thing is, we have been told by our government, hey, you need to come forward. Here's the process to do it. You need to tell us what you know about non-human intelligence, about these UAP. And he's done that, but really there's no follow-up. There's no protections. He has received numerous kind of issues because of his accidental exposure. So what George Knapp and I are trying to do, not just as journalists, but as human beings, is we're trying to make sure that people follow through with those protections that people need to and want to come forward to inform Congress. And I'll tell you something, Elizabeth, that I think is really fascinating. If people really watch this, at one point, Matthew Brown said, my blood ran cold. And this was a briefing that he was able to read the transcripts of while he was in position. And it was between the former head of Aero and Senator Rubio said about the legacy program. Well, what the hell has the executive branch been doing? Had they been running this for 60 years without congressional oversight? This is about the legacy UFO program. Yeah. And the fact is, they have. There's a cover-up. It's in the House, and Congress is pissed.
All right. Jeremy Corbell, something tells me we're going to be hearing a lot more about this.
Next week.
Next week, that's right. And by the way, Jeremy, thank you so much. This Saturday at 8 p.m. Eastern on NewsNation, another UFO whistleblower will be coming forward here exclusively from a former Border Patrol officer who's sharing a never-before-seen military-grade UFO video. Ross Coulthard is hunting UFOs in the American desert, followed by a live after show, only right here on NewsNation. And coming up for us, earlier we brought you the story of Penny the Chihuahua, that poor little dog that barely survived being mauled by 2 pit bulls. Not only is Penny alive, but she's about to appear with Chris Cuomo on his show. Chris joins me next. All right, we don't often tell you about what happens here during commercial breaks, but I can tell you in tonight's show, Chris Cuomo and I have done nothing but talk about this dog mauling case involving these 2 pit bulls and Penny the Chihuahua. You maintain that not all pit bulls are dangerous.
Yes, I'm not. I don't go bad on pit bulls as a breed. It's not fair. It's about the owner. A pit bull like Rottweiler, which is my favorite breed of dog. I have 3 dogs right now. They're all rescues. One of them is a Chihuahua mix. So I get what that dog is and why they're all so special. Everybody loves their fur fam. Rottweiler, pit bull, incredibly strong. Pit bull is a terrier mix, has a locking jaw. If the dog isn't trained the right way, they are more dangerous than a less powerful dog without a locking jaw. But the idea that pit bulls are bad, I don't buy it. It's bad people get pit bulls too often.
Yeah, but there are a lot of people, including the lawyer I just had on my show, who is a lawyer who specializes in representing people in these kinds of situations, says this breed has been bred for many generations to be aggressive and fight other dogs. That, in other words, you really have to work to make them not be aggressive.
Well, look, I'm not saying that you can't have a specialty within dog fighting rings where generation upon generation, sure, then you're going to have more aggressive dogs within the genetics. But still, it's about the training, Elizabeth. You got to blame the human, not the dog, especially in this case.
Well, you're going to be talking to Penny and her owner in your show, as well as covering everything else that's happening. Chris Cuomo, have a great show.